What can we learn about the late Bronze Age from the works of Homer? This is Viva 5, by the way. Although for most of history, Homer's writings were considered to be pure mythology, actually, Homer's writings are much more than simple mythology, and they provide unique insights into the world of the late Bronze Age. First, Homer's writings provide essential insights into the world of the late Bronze Age. Secondly, Homer's writings shaped the development and thinking of the modern archaeological approaches to the Greek world. And thirdly, Homer's language offers insights into the Greek worldview, especially their understandings of color and oral traditions. First off, Homer's writings provide insights into the world of the late Bronze Age. For most of history, the Iliad and the Odyssey were thought to be complete myths. But now, with evidence that has arose, it appears that Homer's writings are somewhat historically accurate. Interestingly, the wanderings of Odysseus were spent at the same times as the wanderings of the Israelites in the desert, circa 1202 BC. Also around this time, there was a mysterious appearance of ash over the whole Middle East, and evidence that things have been burnt, etc. This might be because of a volcano which erupted, and it may have been used by God for the Egyptian plagues. And this could also have caused a poison gas and tidal waves, which would align with Homer and his epics. So this is just a theory, but people are trying to find historical parallels between Homer and other works and historical things that would explain them. Homer's stories are very mythical and embellished, although historical truths may be hidden inside. One example is the Trojan horse. John D. Beatty says, quote, "Disease may have been encoded in the horse saga, but another clue may have been left us in the death of Laocoon by apparent suffocation," unquote. So, as the Greek soldiers are surrounding Troy after years and years of siege, it is supposed that they may have caught anthrax from their horses, which is a common disease caught from farm animals, and they may have decided to finally give up, leave the siege, and go home. But because they had these gross horses, which they had caught the disease from, they just left them behind. Now, the Trojans, who were starving from the siege, might have seen the horses and decided to cook and eat them. Thus, the Trojans could have caught the infectious disease, and because they were very immunocompromised, because they were starving, they could have had very horrible deaths, drowning in their own phlegm, and thus the suffocation of Laocoon in the story. So, the second point is that archaeological explorers in Greece were very inspired to find and see if they could find if the city of Troy was real. And that is what a lot of the archaeological explorers were looking for in Greece. So, as said before, for most of history, scholars were sure that the Trojan War was only legend. But as Peter T. Struck said, quote, "At the close of the 9th century, archaeologists, led by Heinrich Schliemann, found the remains of a great citadel that existed on the western shore of Asia Minor, the traditional location of Troy," unquote. So let's talk about this Schliemann, who turns out to not be a very good archaeologist. Schliemann was a wealthy businessman, a linguist who loved Homer. He was convinced that his works contained actual historical records. Though many didn't agree with him, Schliemann was invited to excavate the mound of Hisarlik in 1871. Eager to find Trohr, Schliemann dug massive trenches all the way to the base of the hill of this mound, where he uncovered many precious artifacts, including jewelry and metalwork. He also found many skeletons and things indicating that this mound had once been a city that was taken over and evidence of a siege. So Schliemann announced that he had found Trohr and took full credit. However, later work of archaeologists determined that the city was too old to be Trohr, but later, after more carelessly excavating by Schliemann, people have now considered that the mound of Hisarlik to be the Trohr of Homer's tales. The third point is that we can learn a lot about Greek culture from Homer's writings, especially their understandings of color and oral traditions. The Iliad and the Odyssey were part of the bardic tradition, where information is passed from generation to generation, not through writing. The oral tradition shows the history and culture of the people through the telling of stories by bards. This was also a popular form of entertainment. We can tell that Homer's works were passed on this way by their structure in figurative language. This can explain things in the writing, like why passages would be repeated over and over. The language of Homer's epics can give us insights into not only the color language of the ancient Greeks, but also of languages throughout the world. William Gladstone's passion for Homer led him to analyze the use of color in Homer's epics. Homer seemed to use color to describe strange objects. For instance, he described honey as green, sheep as violet, and the sea as wine dark. Gladstone also wrote of the curious lack of color in the epics. In fact, Homer never mentions the color blue once. Gladstone suggested that the Greeks may have characterized colors in terms of light and dark contrasts, but many people thought that Gladstone meant that the ancient Greeks were somewhat colorblind, which contradicts science, obviously. Gladstone denied this. In fact, it has been analyzed that many ancient texts around the world have the same absence of color. Linguistic research indicates that the Greek language probably did not have a word for blue. Color names often develop individually and in the same pattern around the world. First black and white appear, then red, then eventually green and yellow, and finally blue and the other colors. Some suggest that this is because some colors do not appear as often in the natural world. And one theory is that a word for color won't develop until the society has developed a pigment for this color that can be reliably manufactured. The Sapir-Whorf hypothesis is the theory that your thoughts and actions are determined by your language, that you begin to see and recognize something once you have a word for it. Edward Sapir says that, quote, the real world is, to a large extent, unconsciously built upon the language habits of the people, of the group, unquote. In conclusion, although Homer's writings were considered to be pure mythology for most of history, they provide us with many insights into the world of the ancient Greeks. First, Homer's writings provide us with insights into the history of the Late Bronze Age. Secondly, Homer's writings have shaped the archaeological pursuits in the ancient world. And thirdly, Homer's language shows the ancient Greeks' understandings of color and oral traditions. Thank you.